Hi, today I'm joined with Luis Salazar Jurado, and today's topic is about Entity Brand SEO in 2026. Is it important? Is it not important? What different kind of benefits are you going to get with now trying to make certain that you're concentrating on your entity and your brand as part of your SEO strategy? So, Luis, take it away.
First of all, thank you for having me. And second of all, it's not something new that brand searches are getting more and more important, and you have to connect your brand with the entity, and then to communicate that to across the internet, so Google understand what you are, what do you do, what's your audience, and what do you sell, basically. So in order to connect the entity, or in order to make clear what your entity or your brand is about, you have to provide all the attributes related to your brand, and you have to communicate that across the internet with third-party sources, social media profile, press releases, and so on and so forth, in order to connect all the dots and create the relationships, because at the end of the day, you are feeding a bot in order to understand all the information about your brand, which is gathered in the knowledge graph. So the better you structure, communicate, and organize the information, not only in your site, but across the whole internet, and the better to create a strategy about how to communicate your brand values, your brand awareness, brand recognition, and third-party sources validation, the better it's going to do for you, because if nobody knows you as a brand and nobody search for you, how Google is going to rank you, how Google is going to understand what do you do, what do you sell, what are your customers, and if you don't show up anywhere on the internet, how important can you be? You're not popular. Nobody knows about you. Nobody search about you, and that's the key nowadays in order to rank better, rank faster, and rank higher. And on top of that, you have to compete in way more verticals, because AI is now everywhere. So you have to show up in AI overviews, all the AI interfaces, and if you're not in the model, you're not in the game, which means if Google do not have information about you and don't compare and contrast that information in third-party sources, there is no corroboration, no consensus, and no validation. You're not in the game, because you're not in the LLM. If you're not in the LLM, you're not in the AI overviews. You're not in the AI answers. Having said that, your brand should be the primary focus. You have to get all the pieces of the puzzle together, put the pillars, grow from there. And to do that, you have to have your knowledge graph, you have to get your KG MID, and you have to organize the information in order to feed the bot, so all that information is accurate. I'm going to give you an example. Imagine that James Dooley is an entrepreneur, among other things. But all the information on the internet have to validate James Dooley is an entrepreneur. And I'm going to use an analogy that you want to buy a business. The business is the entity. The name of the business is the entity. And then you, as an entrepreneur, are going to do the due diligence. The due diligence is the bots coming to your site, crawling your site, and getting all the information. From a business perspective, it's going to be you're going to analyze debt, cash flow, margins, assets, liabilities, and so on and so forth. And all those variables are the attributes about the entity, and the entity is the business you want to buy. So, using that analogy, and you want to rank for your brand. Your brand has a name, it is an entity. And then you have to provide all the attributes, which is all the variables that are going to have the information about your brand. The due diligence is the analogy from the bot coming to your site and crawling you. But only studying and researching the financial statements is not necessary. You need to do a research. You need to contact people. You have to, if you do a proper research, you have to talk to former employees. You have to talk to the banks. You have to talk to lawyers, and so on and so forth, that deserve the third-party validation. And on top of that, to use the SEO analogy, when bots come and you get all the information about the brand, okay, but then Google have to visit your social media profiles, have to analyze your reviews, citations, press releases, and so on and so forth. And when you get all that data, if Google trusts you enough, it's going to rank you. In the same analogy, if you're a business owner and you want to buy a new business, if all that data is trustworthy enough, you're going to buy that business. In that way, using this analogy, to rank with your brand, you have to be trustworthy. People have to search for a brand. Your data have to be accurate and consistent across the whole internet. And that is going to give you trust, and people are going to search for you and going to buy your product or services.
Right. Now, I want to stop you on this, and I want to go through, because that was a brilliant analogy, and I love everything you went in, and I've got a million questions now to expand upon there. So what I love about that analogy is, if some of the numbers I was looking to buy that business with wasn't correct, and my lack of confidence then would be, if they don't know their numbers, what else don't they know, and what else could be lacking? Therefore, I might not end up investing in that company. Like Google, their confidence score needs to be high to trust you, to be able to rank you. So I love that analogy. But when we're there was talking about Entity Brand SEO in 2026, we're in 2026 now, and a lot of people in the SEO communities understand that branding is very important. And it's been important for a long time, to be honest with you. Branded clicks, branded mention, branded anchor text, brand for the win. Everyone's talking about brand and branding, saying this is what you need to do. But entities, not many people talk about entity SEO. And you expanded upon that there, where you spoke about the knowledge graph, right? And you spoke about what Jason Barnard talks about, the algorithmic trinity is what he calls it. So that's making certain that you've got a knowledge panel, and that knowledge panel has got a high confidence score within the knowledge graph. That's one part of the trinity. The second part of the trinity is Google rankings, just normal website rankings that people, kind of traditional rankings that people know about. And the third one is the artificial intelligence. So ranking in Claude, Perplexity, Gemini overviews, and getting those LLMs. And that's what Jason Barnard calls the algorithmic trinity, right? But on the knowledge graph specifically, and being an entity, you spoke about a KGMID. For anyone that doesn't know what that stands for, it stands for Knowledge Graph Machine ID. Am I right in saying that if your website or your brand doesn't have a KGMID, that therefore Google then doesn't even know as being as an entity? You're only an entity when you've got assigned a KGMID. Is that correct in what I'm saying there?
Absolutely. You're totally right. I'm going to use again an analogy. Let's think about an offline example. Each one of us have a number, a phone number. The phone number is the ID. We all have a passport number. The passport number is the ID. Each one in each country have an identity card, which is a number. If you think about it, all those numbers are IDs about ourselves. We are the same entity, in this case, the entity person. Entity person, but we have three different identifiers, the phone number, the identity card, and the passport number. But all those three numbers are connected to the same entity, which is entity person each one of us has. Each brand, each entity on the internet have an identifier. and as you mentioned, is the KGMID. So, if you launch a site, if you launch a brand, but Google do not have that KGMID, doesn't know who you are. So they create an identifier for each entity on the internet. And if you don't know your own identifier, you cannot connect with Google. Google knows who you are, but you don't know your own number. It's like, to use an analogy, is if someone asks you for your phone number and you don't know what your phone number is, how are they going to connect? How are you contact with that person? So in let's say technical terms, you have to create a way to connect with Knowledge Graph API, which is nothing more than a number, an identifier, so you are connected to the universal data, which is the internet. Because if not, you are an isolated entity. And if you are an isolated entity, how Google is going to know about you?
Yeah, for sure. And this is where anyone who's watching this, we're going to do a whole podcast series around entities and branding and KGMIDs. So we're going to dig a lot deeper into the importance of, one, how you trigger a KGMID, two, how you improve the confidence score of that KGMID, three, how you identify what your KGMID number is, and that making certain that you don't have two or three, because Google can end up creating multiple KGMIDs if it's not certain it's this exact same. If it's different facets being used of who you are, it can create multiple. Like I had 3 different KGMIDs because I had my podcasts, I had my books, and I had enough information on digital PR that I was an entrepreneur, and it created me 3 different, what you would then deem as being 3 different telephone numbers, and I needed to sort it out. And I didn't even know that I had that problem until I started to understand how important the knowledge graph is for my personal entity. So if I don't know what it is, how can I expect Google to understand what it is? But anyone who's watching this, make sure you check out the links in the description to the podcast series. But I want to expand a little bit more. I want to ask you 1 or 2 other questions, Lewis, with regards to schema, right? And the amount of people out there, I've seen certain videos saying schema's not a ranking factor, and schema, you don't need to use schema, and JSON LD and stuff like that. And do you know what? I used to think that many years ago, and now I'm laughing at the people that are saying that schema's not important, because I'm now starting to understand how important it is to make certain that I'm telling Google that this James Dooley is this KGMID. That this James Dooley is this James Dooley's Facebook page. That this James Dooley is this Twitter account, James Dooley account. Because there's more than one James Dooley. There's only one KGMID for, well, in my case there was multiple ones, but now I've got one KGMID. One ID, like one passport number of who I am, but there's hundreds of James Dooleys in the world. So I need to differentiate myself to say, this is the James Dooley that I want connected in this bucket. This is who I am. This is what I do. I'm not the musician. I'm the entrepreneur that invests in companies, that does lead generation for companies in the UK. This is me, and this is what I want you to know about me. How important, can you explain to people how important JSON LD and schema is for those connections and that confidence score for Google to understand, okay, now I get who you are and what you do, and why that glue, in my opinion, schema is the glue to connect everything together properly. Can you explain to people watching this the importance of schema for that reason?
It's very important. First, because the schema is a standard that was created in 2011, if I remember correctly, by Google, Bing, and other search engines, which is something that all the biggest search engines agreed upon a long time ago. Second of all, is machine-readable information, which is the fastest, cheapest, and more efficient way to communicate with a machine. Thirdly, it is a standard that the more the people they use and the more efficient it is designed, the JSON LD and program, the more granular, accurate information is going to be provided. And as you mentioned, there are a lot of James Dooley on the internet in the world. The only way you can disambiguate who you are is with the KGMID plus accurate, unique information about yourself that there is no other way, or you as an owner of that data can communicate, corroborate and consolidate and create consensus all over the internet. The fastest, cheapest and more efficient way to communicate is with JSON-LT. Why? First of all, because the bot do not have to crawl not only the homepage, neither the whole site, but they just come to the site, check if there is JSON-LT. If there is, they just get there, get the JSON and leave. All that information, it is structured properly, and the more granular and better organized, the better, because it's the fastest way they're going to understand who you are, what's your ID, in this case the KGMID. You're going to provide all the information in order to disambiguate James Dooley entrepreneur from another James Dooley on the internet, and you control the message, you control the data, and you control the connections, so that way you have the power. And JSON-LT, as you mentioned, is the glue that put all the pieces together and communicate with a machine, because at the end of the day, they're nothing more than machines themselves running, gathering the data, and testing and checking and digesting information to make sure that the data is accurate, is a real fact. There is no human that is going to check if that information is correct or not, because at the end of the day, everything I would say is semi-automated. So you have the chance to design your own message with a machine with JSON-LT based on unique information. You have the power and you have the way to communicate that information, and the better it is designed and structured, the JSON-LT, the more granular, the better. Why? Because not only you can communicate with a machine in the most efficient way, but if someone comes to from a reputation management perspective, you have the control. Nobody can fake that information. They can fake it, but if you give the information to Google first and directly in the historical data, you are the first. You are the winner of the race, let's say.
Yeah, I was just writing some notes down then of where you was talking about it. There was some great kind of terms that you was using. And with regards to corroboration, I'm going to try and just mention a few of these different terms with regards to, in my opinion, just from a simplistic point of view. You're a very technical background. I'm a businessman that understands now the importance that you drilled into me, the importance of the technicalities side of JSON-LT and stuff like that. I love the fact of what you were saying. It was the cheapest and the fastest, and it's machine readable. So the algorithms can come and quickly understand who you are, what you do, and who you serve. You mentioned there corroboration. So trying to get that on third-party websites and corroborating who you are and what you do as being an entity. But for me, the main three terms that I take away is disambiguation. So trying to get that disambiguation, trying to make certain that there's no uncertainty, right? And where that comes from is clarity and confidence. And if you get that clarity right, and they're confident that they're not doing disambiguation and they understand exactly who you are, when they're confident in who you are and what you do, at that point they can trust you. And I think where people use the word trust from a brand, a lot of that comes back down to clarity and confidence. How confident are they at understanding who you are and what you do? And when they start to understand that, and especially when it's on third-party sources, where some people would be calling backlinks, we've actually done a video on this of why backlinks is good for query augmentation. Check out the link in the description. But why backlinks now, they've evolved in 2026 to be more than just PageRank and link juice. Why backlinks now is about this extension of your semantic content network on third-party sources, explaining and actually repeating the information of who you are and what you do and why you are the best company out there or the best shop out there to sell jewelry or to sell insurance or for me to provide leads for. It's about building that confidence score up within the algorithms. Is there anything else you can expand upon that with regards to schema before I move on to anything else to do with entities and branding?
Yes. Related to a schema, I would say disambiguation is very expensive for Google. Why? Because the bigger the internet, the more entities they have to crawl, understand, digest. The more expensive it is for the algorithm to process and organize and connect all that data. The more granular and accurate you are with the JSON-LD, the cheapest and faster and easier it is for them to understand you. And it's a competitive advantage because every day there are new brands, there are new sites, a lot of information to crawl. And there is for those interested in expanding on it, there is a report. They can search on Google, the messy middle. It was a study that Google launched years ago, where, again, disambiguation is very costly for them. And when they're not sure, because at the end of the day, it's an algorithm deciding A or B, when they're not sure between A, B, C, or a bunch of options, let's say, I'll use an example. Let's say an example much wider than this. Let's say John Smith. John Smith is a very common name, but if you study history, there are a lot of John Smith. If you type John Smith, Google doesn't know which John Smith specifically you want. You need another word before and after in order to provide an attribute to segment down the John Smith list across the history. And if you provide the second word, is going to be the second attribute about the entity John Smith, and it's going to again narrow down the universe of data. That logic, you can do it with JSON-LD. You can design the JSON-LD with your KGMID, provide all the data very granularly, very detailed, and you feed the bot. The bot comes to your site, get the JSON-LD, and it's going to disambiguate the fastest way. And with third-party corroboration and backlinks, the only thing you do is make it sticky. Let's use an example of a human. You cannot trust another human just with one interaction.
Yeah.
You only trust another human only from a friend of yours that you trust a lot. And from human to trust, you need a lot of time to create that trust. Only with one interaction, you're not going to make it. So, and if you trust immediately a third person, and there is a second person in the middle, usually is a friend of yours or a business partner you have dealing with that person for probably decades, because if not, you're not going to trust it. I mean, think about it. The old way before the internet, the only way you can trust the butcher, the mechanic, the electrician, and everything else, it was by recommendation. That analogy nowadays in the online world, the only difference is it's going to be faster because of the algorithms. How an algorithm is going to trust you just with one source of information? It's not going to make it. They need a lot of sources of information to trust you. And the more accurate, granular, cheapest it is for them to understand who you are, what you do, what you sell, the better.
Yeah, do you know what I was just writing something down again there, because something that I absolutely love about when I'm speaking to yourself or the people in the SEO, like semantic SEO community, in the holistic marketing group of like Corey, where people have learned a lot from him. Everyone thinks that the semantic SEO community is all about certain things like attributes, predicates, facets, semantic content networks, topical maps, micro semantics and stuff like that, right? And then they're talking within semantic triples like entity, attribute, value, subject, predicate, object, and stuff like that. That's what everyone pigeonholes your community to. But now we're talking here about branding and entities and KGMIDs, and a lot of this isn't just about semantic content on your website, which is what people think. Like, you guys holistically understand the whole game of what is needed. You understand that backlinks needed. You understand that branded searches, branded mentions, that you need an entity. Holistically, you need to be omni-channel. You need to be omnipresent. There's way more to it than what people pigeonhole the SEO, the semantic SEO community to, is what I'm trying to say. Now we're talking here about branding, and like now we've been speaking about schema and JSON LD and stuff like that. How important do you feel brand and entities is? If you went to just go and build a topical map and a semantic content network and try to build topical authority, how much easier is that content able to rank when you looked at the corroboration, the branding, and the backlinks? Like, how important is that? If somebody's just looking at trying to just do one page on its own and not looking at what we've been talking about here with regards to off-page signals, social media, and branded clicks and all the rest of it, how important is that for people listening to this, that it's not just about a topical map and a semantic content network and doing good topical authority? The brand and the entity and building that up is still vital for them to do as part of their strategies.
Yes. Again, I'm going to use an analogy because the only way I figured it out, I can communicate with other people. Let's say you want to solve a puzzle. To make the puzzle, you need all the pieces of the puzzle and organize all the pieces in the right order and in the right way, and then you solve the puzzle. It's the same thing as you mentioned. Topical map on itself is not going to solve the puzzle. It's not going to solve all your problems. Backlinks alone is not going to solve your problems. JSON LD itself is not going to solve the problem. The puzzle, which means ranking your brand, getting query augmentation, etc., is the whole puzzle put together in the proper order with the right strategy. Is kind of a work plan, properly designed and perfectly executed. Why? Because you are competing with brands in the same way. It's a kind of a match of data, comparison data, and which one you deserve to be on top. Or another example I use is the football analogy. Let's say the Premier League. There are a bunch of teams competing. Each one of them have the same football players. And if you notice in the first 3 to 4 positions, very few times the top one is sticky. Positions are changing constantly. Why? Because sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. And the same players have a bad day and they lose against a team that in theory it is inferior. So in the same analogy with an algorithm sometimes is going to put you in top positions, sometimes in the third position, sometimes in the second position. And the clicks of the users is the variable that is going to move the needle and put you up or down. But to be competitive, you have to tick all the boxes, because one variable alone is not going to move the needle. One football team with one player is not going to win the match. So, and the thing is coming back to the football analogy, football matches are limited, but on the internet the game is 24/7, 365. You cannot stop, because the moment you stop, you're going to lose. And let's say the award comes from Google card updates, which is from time to time Google decide which is going to be on top and which is not going to be on top, and it's kind of margin of time when Google evaluate you, and they're going to make sure that if you deserve to be in the Premier League, in the second league, or not even in the competition. That's the analogy I came up with. That I'm gonna sum up what you mentioned, which is holistic view, holistic approach, execute the plan strategically and intelligently, and balance the resources in order to win the match, and at the end of the day win the competition.
Yeah, for sure. Holistically, just be omnichannel, be omnipresent. That's what branding and building that entity is about. For anyone who's watching this is the first part in a series to do with branding SEO in 2026, entity SEO in 2026, and KGMID SEO in 2026. Leave a comment in the comment section. What questions do you want me to ask Lewis? What do you want me to dig deeper onto? It could be triggering KGMIDs. It could be something to do with improving the knowledge graph score, how to improve, or advanced schema strategies that Lewis is using. So let us know in the comments what you want us to talk about to do with entity brand SEO in 2026. Lewis, it's been an absolute pleasure. And
thank you.
See you again soon.
Bye-bye.